ko hinanap. Ikaw na ang bumaba dahil lamang sa habag. Ako ay pinili at pinatawad pa. Binigay ang iyong buhay, o pag-ibig na dakila. Tinawag mong bayan ng malayo sa'yo. Kinilala kang Diyos na rebelde sa'yo. Nasumpungan ikaw ng iyong para sa'yo. Anong biyaya to na pinili ako? Walang mabuting bagay lumalabas sa akin. Puro lang kasalanan ang ninais. Ngunit ako'y sinagip sa dagat na malalim. Ito'y di ko mawarin na ako'y pinili. Dumating ang biyaya na di ko hinanap. Ikaw na ang bumaba dahil lamang sa habag. Ako ay pinili at pinatawad pa. Binigay ang iyong buhay, o pag-ibig na dakila. Tinawag mong bayan ng malayo sa'yo. Kinilala kang Diyos na rebelde sa'yo. Nasumpungan ikaw ng iyong para sa'yo. Anong biyaya to na pinili ako? Walang mabuting bagay lumalabas sa akin. Puro lang kasalanan ang ninais. Ngunit ako'y sinagip sa dagat na malalim. Ito'y di ko mawarin na ako'y pinili.
Sinatip sa kapahamakan, kaya wala dahilan para magpakahangal at magpakahalang. Magpasalamat naman, ikaw ay kanyang binili na maniran sa kahari ang kanyang pag-aari. Nag-iisang putang, ikaw magpaparalinisin ang kasalanan at lumilay. Grabe na pakaraming sakripisyo, kumama si Kristo para sa lahat. Salamat sa lahat, ako may makasalanan. Walang sawa mo pa rin akong bimigay. Aliti ni Kristo ang pananampalataya. Buod inalis sa kaluluwa, ilipat sa iyong anak. Parang sa hostisya ng pagpapapili mo sa mga makasalanan. Si Jacob minahal, si Isaw pinapuputan bago pumati panganak ang hambal. Tinawag mong bayan ng malayo sa'yo. Kinilala kang Diyos na rebelde sa'yo. Nasumpungan ikaw ng iyong para sa'yo. Anong biyaya to na pinili ako? Walang mabuting bagay lumalabas sa akin. Puro lang kasalanan ang ninais. Ngunit ako'y sinagip sa dagat na malalim. Ito'y di ko mawarin na ako'y pinili. Nasumpungan ikaw ng di umanap sa'yo. Anong biyaya to na pinili ako? Yo, shout out. Let's go, utang muna yung shoutout ha. Ito, dito tayo magsisimula. Hinili ko na to kasi nabasa ko na yung buong process, ay yung buong decision. So, nasa isip ko kasi, siyempre pinakinggan ko yung mga rebellious legal luminaries. Si Fiscal EJ.
prosecutor yun, ha? Kaya never ka magiging judge. Bakit? You suck at logic, dude. Yun lang yun. Dito lang tayo mag-work. Okay? Etong formulang to. Okay? Kasi I realize yung Supreme Court's decision is actually relying on the material equivalence or constitutionally equivalent in logic. Okay? Ano ko muna sa inyo yung logical by conditional. Okay? Ito. Semantically, the only case where logical by conditional is different from material conditional is the case of hypothesis, antecedent is false, but the conclusion consequent is true. Okay, anyway. Ito. A common way of demonstrating a by conditional of the form P is material equivalent to Q is to demonstrate that P and Q and Q and P. So, ganito lang yun. Ganito lang kasimple. Kapag binaliktad mo yung statement, same sila. Okay? Yun yung ibig sabihin ng material equivalent. For example, kaya nga naging tautology ang di ba? Ang bachelor is an unmarried man. Okay. Unmarried man is materially equivalent to bachelor. Gets? Kahit baliktarin mo yung statement na yon, same shit. Pero pag hindi sila parehas, magkakaroon ka ng illicit conversion. Ay yung tinatawag na, okay, yung, punta nga tayo sa, ito. Material equivalence. Yan. Ito. Material equivalent propositions can be used interchangeably within the propositional logic. Pag binaliktad mo nga, parehas sila. Okay? Kaya yung naalala nyo, in-argue ko rito sa age of sexual consent. Ito, example. Bigyan natin ng example, ha? Ito. Example. The statements, if it is raining, then the ground is wet. Okay? And it is not raining or the ground is wet are materially equivalent. They have the same truth value in every possible scenario, both true or both false. Okay? By conditional, material equivalence is often represented by conditional connectives. Ito yun. Una kita nyo. Yan, ha? Okay. Which is true only when both parts have the same truth value. Okay? So, clear na tayo doon. Pag binaliktad mo. Okay? Pag binaliktad mo, equivalent sila ng truth value, then they're materially equivalent. Parang H2O, water. Okay? If and only if, yes, yan yun. If and only if. Okay? So, may dalawang klase niya sa deflationary theory of truth, which is the T-sentence at T-proposition. Okay? Sentence is the letter, language specifics. Tapos, yung proposition is regardless of the language. Okay? Okay tayo doon. Pag binaliktad mo, same sila. Then, pwede mo interchange. Pag interchange mo sila, they're materially equivalent. Okay? Pero pag hindi sila nag-equal, it means meron kang illicit conversion. Okay? Kinonvert mo illegally. Okay? Okay, let's go. So, punta muna tayo sa final note ng Supreme Court. Okay? It is not our duty to favor any political result. Ours is to ensure that politics are framed within the rule of just law. We cannot concede to sobriety of fairness. Fairness kasi to. Inherent in due process of law to the passions of a political moment. Our fundamental law is clear. The end doesn't justify the means. We understand our history. We have learned that in the past, momentary desires to do what is convenient and concede means to ends have inadvertently created precedents that weaken the succor of law for those who dissent, or those that are society's margins, or those who may have fallen out of grace from the powers that be. Okay? We have learned that the clash of political interests in the past, often disguised by noble intentions, has obscured the need to address the real problems of corruption, inequality, poverty, and disempowerment faced by our people.
We will not allow that to happen again. We will not hesitate to declare what is legal, just, and right for our people. Kahit ilang bashing pa yung matanggap nila. Okay? There is a right way to do the right thing at the right time. This is what the rule of just law means. This is what fairness or due process of law means, or even for impeachment. So, binasa ko. So, kung mababasa nyo, ang buong point ng Supreme Court dito is heavily relied on due process, right? Constitution, due process. And then, napanood ko yung ano ni Atty. Libayan kagabi ba yun? Nakatulog kasi ako ng maaga eh. So, may sinabi si Atty. Libayan doon na marami kasi sinasabi na tinalikuran yung decision ng Francisco, no? It's not, actually. Punta tayo dito, ha? Punta tayo dito. Ito. 11 Congress rules, 12 Congress rules, okay? Basahin natin, ha? Section 2, mode of initiating impeachment. Impeachment shall be initiated only by a verified complaint for impeachment filed by any member of the House of Representatives or by any citizen upon a resolution of endorsement by any member thereof or by a verified complaint or resolution. Wala dito nakalagay sa committee, right? Wala pa. Okay? Dito, impeachment proceeding deemed initiated in cases where a member of the House files a verified complaint of impeachment or a citizen files a verified complaint that is endorsed by a member of the House through a resolution of endorsement against an impeachable officer. Wala pa tayong nakikitang Committee on Justice, right? Okay. Impeachment proceedings against such officials are deemed initiated on the day of the Committee on Justice. Ayan na. Finds that the verified complaint or resolution against such officials the case may be is sufficient in substance or on the date the House votes to overturn or affirm the finding of the said committee that the verified complaint or blah blah blah. Tapos ito yung 1/3. Alright? Okay? So, ngayon, sabi nga ito ng Libayan kahapon, kagabi yata yun. 3 na, di ba? Kapag in-archive mo and you violated due process at saka deemed initiated yung kay Francisco. Tama? So, 3 na ngayon yung instances. Hindi sila tumalikod doon, nag-clarify lang sila. Okay? Hindi sila tumalikod doon, nag-clarify lang sila. Why? Okay. Kasi, I understand that the Supreme Court, dito kasi sa decision ng Supreme Court, parang yung sakit ko dati, na they assume a lot of things. Like, for example, alam na kagad na magbabasa kung ano yung ibig nila sabihin, right? Pero, I understand din na ang inaasahan naman ng Supreme Court na magbasa nito is actually those people in legal professions, right? Tama naman, di ba? So, ibig sabihin, tayo as lay people, okay, understandable na we don't understand it that easy or that clearly. Okay? So ngayon, once we understand it, it's our job, it's our responsibility to actually explain it to people in layman's term. Okay? Dahil nga hindi ako lawyer, I will use logic. I will use logic to actually explain it to you ng mas madali. Okay? Mapapansin nyo dito sa decision ng Supreme Court. Heavily relied on due process. Right? Kaya, yung sinabi, unang-una, jurisdiction. Kung meron silang jurisdiction doon. Sinabi nila na yung impeachment is Ito. Sinabi nila Ito. Impeachment, therefore, is not solely a political process. It is a sui generis constitutional process that is primarily legal but with political characteristics. Importante yung axiom na yan. Okay? Kasi, dyan papasok yung jurisdiction nila. Okay? So, mali yung sinasabi na it's actually purely political. Ano yung argumento nila? Di ba, isa sa mga argumento ng kabilang side, hindi dapat nakikialam ang Supreme Court dyan. But at the same time, they're actually citing the Francisco to actually prove that. Pero, sinabi rin dito, nilagay mismo yan doon sa Francisco, hindi sila total hands off. In fact, nakailam nga sila. Nagets? Nakailam nga sila eh. So, ibig sabihin, hindi totoo yung sinasabi na purely political process yan. Constitutional process that's primarily legal but with political characteristics. Okay? Now, para patunayan yon, ang ginawa nila is nag-posit sila ng argumento ng due process. Very, very conservative, right? Ngayon, the other side actually agreed sa due process. And in fact, they actually defended na they afforded VP Sara due process. Why would you argue due process if it's purely political? Then you're actually admitting na it is legal primarily, then with political characteristics, right? Self-referentially incoherent yung argument nila. Hindi nila matakasan yung pagiging legal kahit sui generis. Yes, ibig naman sabihin sui generis is one of its kind. That's it. Pero hindi ibig sabihin na immune ka. Immune ka na sa due process. Right? Kasi maraming bagay na nakikialam. Kaya nga, yung sa mga Senate hearing, di ba, ang ginagawa is nireklamo yung Senate, blah, blah, blah. So, okay. Napaka-importante yung dalawang yun. Unang-una, kailangan nilang establish na meron silang jurisdiction, which is constitutional process that is primarily legal with political characteristics. Okay? They just have to be careful not to touch the political side of things. Okay? Constitutional lang. Okay? Second, in order to establish that jurisdiction na constitutional, they have to appeal to the very basic ng law, due process, which they establish. Okay? So, dalawa na ngayon. Ngayon, I was thinking, okay, ang pinag-uusapan dito, what is deemed initiated? Or initiated, right? Tama ba? Yung ba yung ano? Tama ba? So, ngayon, gumawa ako ng yung formula na yan para makita nyo kung ano yung material equivalent. Kasi the law is not criminal. It's not actually looking for loophole. Okay? Lawyers do that. Okay? Politicians do that. But the law and the Constitution, it doesn't act like that. They're not criminals. They're not criminals in the sense of finding loopholes in the law. Tinatakpan nila yung loophole sa law. That's how it works, right? O ngayon, ito ngayon. So, okay, established na jurisdiction, due process, established na. Ngayon, how do we prove it? Any interpretation regarding its procedures, grounds, and consequences must be read with the entirety of the Constitution. Decisions regarding whether to file articles of impeachment, to acquit, convict, blah, blah, blah. Unlike cases decided by judges, it has only happened, blah, blah, blah. Impeachment is a constitutional measure designed to protect the state from official delinquencies and malfeasance, the punishment of the offender being merely incidental. Okay, tingnan natin ngayon. Okay, kasi pinag-iisipan ko, bakit heavily argued yung due process? Kasi sinabi nga ni Atty. Libayan doon sa isang video niya kahapon na puntan niya natin. Ito ba yan? Ito nga. Ito nga yung pinapanood ko ngayon eh.
Papasalin niya ba yung Francisco? Hindi. Bakit?
Ito.
Sabi sa Francisco, okay, papasok ang 1-year bar
Ah,
kapag na-initiate or deemed initiated yung complaint.
correct.
That is one.
Ah.
Number two, because of this case, because of this Sara Duterte case, sabi niya, papasok din yung 1-year bar rule kapag may impossibility of initiation due to House inaction and adjournment of its term. Yun yung pangalawang dahilan para papasok yung 1-year bar rule. Ano yung pangatlong dahilan para pumasok yung 1-year bar
Ito.
rule? Okay? The 1-year bar may also start to commence upon violation of the fundamental rights of the respondents. So kapag
Very important. Very important.
ikaw hindi ka syunga-syunga katulad ng mga abogadong dyan na naninira sa Supreme Court, pag iintindihan mo ito,
So, gets nyo na. Due process, violation of the ng respondent, and then yung sa pag-archive, right? Actually, ang atake dito ng Supreme Court is two-prong. Pag-archive, inaction, at the same time due process. Parang bakit kasi ako bakit why are you talking about the due process? So, thinking hanggang sa maging sore na yung thinking ko. And then, yon. So, so I realize something. Okay. Yung pag-archive is ay problema ng initiation, right? Punta tayo doon sa Francisco. Punta muna tayo dito. Respondent House of Representatives through Speaker Divinesha argues that Section 16 and 17 of Rule 5 of the House Impeachment Rules do not violate Section 3, Paragraph 5 of Article 11 of our present Constitution, contending that the term initiate doesn't mean to file. That Section 3 is clear that it is the House of Representatives as a collective body which has exclusive power to initiate all cases of impeachment. That initiate could not possibly mean to file because filing can, as Section 3, as the Constitution provides, only be accomplished in 3 ways. 3 ways lang daw yung pag-accomplish. One, a verified complaint for impeachment by any member of the House of Representatives, or 2, by any citizen upon a resolution of endorsement of any member, or 3, by at least 1/3 of all members of the House. Respondent House of Representatives concludes that 1-year bar prohibiting blah 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 blah. Okay? So ngayon, yun yung argumento. Okay, ngayon, the resolution of this issue hinges on the interpretation of the term initiate. That's the definition. Mamaya, ipapakita ko sa inyo, premise, conclusion, definitionally, deductive, I will prove that it actually starts with filing a verified complaint and endorsed by a member. Are you excited? Yes, you have to. Inescapable to. Inescapable to, guys. Resort to statutory construction is therefore in order. That the sponsor of the provision of Section 3, Paragraph 5 of the Constitution, Commissioner Florence Regalado, who eventually became an Associate Justice in this court, agreed on the meaning of initiate as to file. Agreed, right? Okay. As preferred and explained by Constitutional Commissioner Maambong during the Constitutional Commission proceedings, which he, Commissioner Regalado, affirmed during the oral arguments on the instant petitions held on November 5, 2003, at which he added the act of initiating included the act of taking initial action on the complaint dissipates any doubt that indeed the word initiate, as it twice appears in the article 11, paragraph 3 and 5 of the Constitution means to file the complaint and take initial action on it. Okay. Initiate, of course, is understood by ordinary men to mean as to begin, blah, blah, blah. Briefly, impeachment is... The beginning or the initiation is filing of the complaint and its referral to the Committee on Justice. Okay? Finally, it should be noted that the House rule relied upon the Representatives Cojuangco of Fuentabella says that impeachment is deemed initiated when the Justice Committee votes in favor of impeachment or when the House reverses a contrary vote of the committee. Note that the rule doesn't say impeachment proceedings are initiated but rather deemed initiated. Ano yung point? Kasi deemed initiated, that language, ito yung sinasabi, that language, the language is recognition that initiation happened earlier. But by legal fiction, there's an attempt to postpone it at time actually initiation. Kasi ganito, if you actually view that the initiation is kapag nandun na sa Committee on Justice, then, ito yung mangyayari consequence. Right? Then you have to plug that loophole. Bakit? I will explain later. Ito. As stated earlier, one of the means interpreting constitutions looking into the intent of the law. Fortunately, the intent of the framers of the 1970 Constitution can be pried from its records. Mr. Maambong, with reference to Section 3, regarding the procedure, substantive provisions, blah, blah, blah. However, I would like to indicate that I submitted to the committee a resolution on impeachment proceedings, copies of which have been furnished, blah, blah, blah. This is born out of my experience as a member of Committee on Justice, Human Rights and Good Governance, which took government with charge of the last impeachment resolution filed before the first Batasan Pambansa. For the information of the committee, the resolution covers several steps in the impeachment proceedings starting with with initiation, action of the Speaker, committee action, calendar of report, voting on the report, transmittal, referral to the Senate, trial and judgment by the Senate. Eto na. Mr. Maambong, Mr. Presiding Officer, I am not moving for the reconsideration of the approval of the amendment, blah, 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 thinking we do not really initiate the filing of the articles, blah, blah, blah. Ito. The procedure, as I have pointed out earlier, was that the initiation starts with the filing of the complaint. And what is actually done on the floor is that the committee resolution containing the articles of impeachment is the one approved by the body. Ito. It is not the body which initiates it. It only approves or disapproves the resolution. Cool. That's a good point, right? The body doesn't actually initiate it. They only approve or disapprove, right? Tama, gets nyo, right? Okay, ito. The resolution and the articles of impeachment to the body, and it was the body who approved the resolution, it is not the body which initiates it. It only approves or disapproves the resolution. Pupunta ngayon tayo sa argumento ko. Premise 1. Okay? Punta na muna tayo sa second mode. To prove to you that actually inescapable na ang initiation, it starts with a filing. Verified and endorsed by a member. Inescapable. Why? Premise 1. In the second mode, there is no referral to the Committee on Justice. Correct? Correct? They bypass the Committee on Justice, right? No internal House debate, no preliminary filtering. Tama? Tama ba tayo doon? Tama ba tayo doon? The filing itself by 1/3 of all House members is the entire act that transforms the complaint into official articles of impeachment. It follows, right? Once the complaint becomes the articles of impeachment, the House no further deliberative power. The duty becomes purely ministerial. They must transmit it to the Senate. Conclusion. Therefore, the act of filing is necessarily and inescapably the initiation of the impeachment process because sa second mode is the one-third of the House members who filed it. So don't tell me na nagsimula ang initiation process sa pag-transmit sa Senate. That's bullshit. Right? Ulitin natin. On the second mode, who filed the impeachment complaint is the one-third of the House, right? Right? Do you get it? Mukhang nag-gets na ni no nonsense eh. Inescapably, it is actually on the filing. Now, unless you're going to do an asymmetrical logic, let's do that then. So ngayon, kung ang sasabihin mo, hindi sa filing ang initiation, saan? Sa Committee on Justice. Nasaan ang Committee on Justice equivalent dito sa second mode? Wala. Tapos na yung impeachment kapag na-transmit na. Exactly. Di ba nagsigawan na sila doon, mga mukhang tanga sila? Oh. Punta ulit tayo sa second mode. Ay. Ito. Ito. Or a resolution of impeachment is filed or endorsed, as the case may be, by at least one-third of the members of the House. Impeachment proceedings are deemed initiated at the time of the filing of such verified complaint or resolution of impeachment with the Secretary General. Ang baho mo na tingnan, pre. Ayos din na. Ayoko yung anong pakialam mo. O, ganito gawin mo. O, gawa ka ng sarili, ng legit account mo. O, nakialam ka sa akin. O, pakialaman din kita. Pakita ka ng real account mong bobo ka. O, sakit ba? Ang sakit ba? Dahil explain namin sa Supreme Court. Masakit ba? O, okay lang yan. O, let's go. So, inescapably, the premise 1, in the second mode, there is no referral to the Committee on Justice. No internal House debate. No preliminary filtering. Tama? Premise 2. The filing itself by one-third of all House members is the entire act that transforms the complaint into official articles of impeachment. Okay? Once the complaint becomes the articles of impeachment, the House has no further deliberative power. The duty becomes purely ministerial. So, inescapably, on this mode, filing is actually the initiation process. Tama? Tama ba? Therefore, the act of filing is necessarily, inescapably, the initiation of the impeachment process. Debunk me. Now, sasabihin mo, pero nandun tayo sa first mode. Okay, punta tayo sa first mode. Sa first mode, ang gusto mong i-argue is sa Committee on Justice pag referred. Yun yung deemed initiation. Pag-i-initiate. Okay? Yun yung start. Question. What does the Committee on Justice do? Okay. They filter. They investigate, right? It means the Committee on Justice serves as the due process. Right? It's on the name. Guys, come on! It's on the name. Committee on Justice. Justice, dude. What do? They make sure everything is in order. Due process is observed. Right? Okay. Ang sabi mo, doon lang ka mo mag-i-start na mag-initiate. Yun ang start. Question, nasan dito yung mechanism ng Committee on Justice? Ito, binaypas sa Committee on Justice, right? Okay. Nasaan yung mechanism for due process? Dito. Sa second mode. Wala. So, meron kang tinatawag na asymmetrical constitutional process. Tama? Tama? Okay. Kung pupunta tayo ulit sa formula ko, ito, ang ibig sabihin natin ito, initiation by filing in mode 1 and due process. Yung due process dito is the Committee on Justice, right? Kapag tinanggal mo, kapag ito lang ginawa mo, initiation by the form of mode 2, filing on the mode 2, where's the due process? Wala. So, ang tawag dyan is hindi siya materially equivalent. Hindi sila parehas, right? Tama? Tama, right? Ito ang first mode. Ito lang yung second mode. Nasaan yung due process? Nasaan yung due process, guys? Nasaan na? Kaya mapapansin nyo, asan yung due process? Andito yung due process. Naaalala nyo yung tinanong ng Supreme Court sa House. Eto. Which office or committee prepared the drafts of the impeachment? When the impeachment complaint was circulated to the House, whether it's circulated... Hindi yan. Teka, hindi yan tanong eh. Di ba may mga tanong dyan? Ano yung start? Asan na yung tanong? Kailan... Dito na nga lang. Asan ba? Yung may ano tayo naman, may content tayo nun, di ba? May content ako nun eh. Teka, kunin natin. May content ako nun eh. Saan may tinanong? Asan ba yun? SC. May tinanong sa kanila, di ba? Yung mga questions. Hindi ko mahanap sa akin, ah. Basta may mga tinanong na questions. Kapag makikita mo yung tinanong na questions doon, it's about due process, right? Kaya kung mapapansin nyo, yung video ni Fiscal EJ, ang sabi niya, nagdagdag daw ang Supreme Court. Puntahan natin. Ayan pala eh. Ito. Senate to SC, no. Saan yung questions? Supreme Court July asked for specific information such as the date status of first 3 complaints by private citizens, where these complaints were properly endorsed and timely transmitted, who prepared, whether all House members received, reviewed, and voted on charges evidence. Ito. Received, reviewed, and voted. Tama. Bakit? Explain ko yung mamaya. Punta ba tayo sa decision ulit? Feb 6. Ito. Feb 6. Despite filing 3 impeachment complaints, House of Representatives, House, Article Constitution, verified complaint, impeachment should be included in the burden, blah, 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 3 session days. On the same day, February 5, during the third final regular, total of 215. Ito yun eh. 115 members, articles of impeachment, at 40. Ito. Ito. Kaya importante ito. Ha? At 4.47 of February 5, House Secretary Veloso transmitted the articles of impeachment to the Senate even without a plenary vote. However, no formal action was taken by the Senate. The adjourned its plenary until blah blah blah. On February 6, during Kapiyan Senado briefing, Senate President Francis blah, 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 issued blah blah blah. Okay? Saan ba yun? Ito. On February 10, Senate, blah, 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 complete report to Senate President Inc., 215 members of the representatives. He also explained the Senate acting on impeachment court must first establish its rules, blah, blah, blah. And then, yung kay Torion. Yan. Meron ditong sinabi na 2 hours nangyari lahat ng fourth impeachment complaint and the pirmahan and the transmittal at the same day, right? So it's actually physically impossible to accomplish those things na ni-review ng bawat member. At kung makikita nyo din sa decision na to, sinabi niya na dapat lahat bigyan, dapat lahat ma-review, right? Bakit? Why? Because of this. When they bypass the Committee on Justice, they shift the burden of due process sa sarili nila. Get it? Nagets niyo yan? Why? Kasi, ang mechanism ngayon for due process is the 1/3. Sila na mismo yung tatayo as Committee on Justice in the sense of reviewing it. Lahat ng proseso na kailangan ng gawin ng Committee on Justice. Do you get it? It now becomes symmetrical. Why? Kasi dito, sa first mode, may due process. May nag-filter, meron nag-investigate, meron nag-make sure na lahat is in order, pero sa mode 2, wala. But, yung burden ng Justice on Committee is napunta sa sarili nila. Sila na mismo yung mag-make sure na everything is in order. So ngayon, that is the only way na maging materially equivalent to or constitutionally equivalent. Nagets nyo? Ganun ka-easy yung ginawa na Supreme Court. Kung iintindihin nyo lang, kaya they heavily relied on due process, do sa idea na yon, then kaya equivalent ng hindi mo, pag violate mo yung due process, kasi dito, pag violate yung due process, edi defective din. Diba? O, eto ngayon, dahil violate mo walang due process, kaya sinasabi ng Supreme Court dyan, in all stages yan. So, ang nangyari dito is, isang araw, ilang pages yon, wala nangyaring review, walang kahit anong nangyari, and then at the same time, in 2 hours ba yun, in 2 hours, na-accomplish lahat, then it's actually physically impossible to do that. By that fact, it is actually assumed that you violated the right of the respondent. So, ang ginawa lang ng Supreme Court ngayon, alam nyo kung ano, na hindi maintindihan ni Fiscal EJ dahil mahina siya sa logic, boomer kasi, ginawa lang equivalent. Kasi nung una, wala ito. Ayan lang. Initiation by filing mode number 1 and due process is not materially equivalent with initiation by filing mode 2 without due process. Nag-gets nyo na? Yun lang. Kasi sabi ko, bakit naka-heavy sa due process yung Supreme Court? And then, tinignan ko, ano yung mode 1, ano yung mode 2? Well, yung mode 2, sinasabi nila, it actually bypasses the Decision Committee. Ang tawag nga nila doon, shortcut. It is shortcut. Bakit? Dahil, nilagay mo yung burden ng due process sa side mo. So, kung ang issue dito is fairness and justice, and just law, tama yung ginawa ng Supreme Court. Wala siyang violate doon sa sinabi sa Francisco. Wala. Tama pa rin yun. Pero clarify nila, hindi pwede na etong kabilang side, yung left side, is may due process, which is Committee on Justice. Committee on Justice is on the name. Nasa ng equivalent ng Committee on Justice dito sa Mode 2? Wala, di ba? Kasi yung burden na yon, sinif nyo sa sarili nyo. Sa 1/3. Binigay nyo sa sarili nyo yung burden na yon. Kaya nga sa shortcut. So ngayon, it's symmetrical. Now, it's materially equivalent or constitutionally equivalent. Ngayon, yung pinakita ko sa inyo formula na yan, ipakita nyo sa akin yung due process na equivalent ng Committee on Justice sa Mode 2. So, pili kayo. Sa Mode 2, walang Committee on Justice. So, the initiation process ay galing sa an act of filing. That's the initiation process. Either you agree that everything starts with filing. Bakit mo i-imbalance yan? Dito nga filing, oh. Sa mode 2 mo, filing, di ba? File by 1/3. Act of filing is actually initiation process. That's the start. O bakit mo iibahin ngayon sa mode 1? Bakit mo iibahin? What is your justification na ibahin? Sasabihin mo, is nakalagay doon Committee on Justice. Pero nakita natin yung intention of the framers. It starts with the filing. That's actually symmetrical. Ginusto nyo yan Pili kayo, the due process, rest as the house as a whole, o luwabag kayo. Act of filing ang start kahit sa mode 2. So bakit mo papalitan sa mode 1? Sabihin mo kasi may Committee on Justice, okay, fine. Kung sa Committee on Justice ang simula, nasa ng equivalent, materially equivalent na Committee on Justice nyo sa Mode 2? Wala. Nag-start yung buong proseso sa act of filing. So, asymmetric. Shortcut na, asymmetric pa. So, ang ginawa ng Supreme Court, kinuwestiyon kayo sa due process. Dahil yung left side may Committee on Justice. Yung right side na Mode 2, walang due process. Kasi dapat yon, yung due process na yon is napunta sa inyo. Kayo mismo yung magre-review. Kayo mismo yung gagawa ng ano nyo. Dapat nyong gawin sa due process. Pero ginawa nyo ba? O hindi? Kaya nga unconstitutional. God bless inyo lahat. Bye-bye.